Hey, thanks for joining us for a special drop of cannabis legalization news. Today we got the doctor in the house at Green Revolution. Can you introduce yourself?
Yeah, my name is Alex Paya. I've been working for Green Rev for about a year and a half. I'm the operations manager here, and I'm responsible for getting all roughly 120 SKUs out the door on time, day after day.
Now, so I'm not facetious. You're a doctor, though, right?
I'm a doctor. I have a PhD in molecular physiology, plant molecular physiology, and I used to study trees for a living.
How does that translate into this industry? I mean, it sounds like you're coming from a different industry, very well educated, and now you're here. How do you use that skill set?
It's a good question. Chemistry. So a lot of our processes involve, you would just say, like stoichiometry. Basic stoichiometry is the fancy word for math, right?
Wow.
So how do we dial in certain potencies? How do we test for concentrations? So a lot of the chemistry background has helped us kind of avoid, let's say, mistakes by being able to do those calculations sort of in-house as opposed to, looking for other resources. I am the resource, which is really good.
That is stoichiometry.
That's
we'll
right.
put that down there for all of you that don't know how to spell it, and then also noun, and then we'll define it.
That's right.
You mean everybody?
That's right.
Just the 99% of people that don't have a PhD.
Yeah. And then our nano process. So integrating different features of our proprietary ingredients to get us where we are now with our nano process. Of course, having a PhD is great for that. But it's really about troubleshooting. A PhD doesn't really mean you're that smart. It just means you know how to figure stuff out at any time.
Right.
Really, just figure it out. It's kind of like a figure it out degree. So.
With the stoic thing, I'm not going to say it. Try, but it's kind of like it enables you to be like that pharmaceutical because you have to be consistent, right? Repeatability to have the same measurements and the same milligrams per dosage and all that stuff.
Exactly. And so between myself and our QA manager Jen, we have master formulations which incorporate all of that, and then it takes into account potency and then back calculates everything almost automatically these days. So we have very few mistakes.
And is that for like each batch going out the house?
Every single batch has a recipe that's formulated for every single thing. So we are making 20,000 candies today. We're going to be having 20 different recipes, each of which might make for 1,000 pieces of candy, and each one of those recipes is specifically calculated for the cannabis we're using, the CBD isolate we're using, and things of that nature to give us a consistent candy every single time.
Wow. How many SOPs does that require?
For candy, well, one to formulate the recipe, one to actually make the candy, one to sand and sugar them, and then one to package them. So roughly 4.
Wow. Wow. That's so cool.
Yep, it is. You mentioned your nano process. Does the size of the molecule matter, and how do you control it?
The size of the molecule does matter. Ideally, what people think of as a perfect nanoemulsion is one that's transparent, which is not necessarily always the case. In our instance, we use an all-natural surfactant. I'm not going to get into the details. But we target anywhere from 200 to 800 nanometers. So it's sub-micron range. So anything below a single micron, even if it's 999 nanometers, it's still a nanoparticle. But in an idealized environment, what we're trying to achieve is anywhere from 2 to 500 nanometers. And that just rapidly increases the overall bioavailability of the product. Now, what we use is ultrasonic technology to generate our nanoparticles, and our instrumentation allows us to measure the amount of kilowatt hours, or effectively the amount of energy you're putting into a solution. And so you might have more cannabinoids in one solution, less cannabinoids in the other, but you can dial in the amount of energy that you are providing to that solution based on what the machine readout kind of gives to you, so that you can have a more consistent product.
That readout, is it like giving you like the THC and the terpene levels, or what is it?
No, it's much more rudimentary. It's quite literally saying, as the machine is running, the amount of time that is being put in based on the amplitude and the power that the machine is set to, it's going to give you, let's say, 24,000 equivalences of energy. So you're going to have you're going to need a lot more energy for a lot more cannabinoids and a lot less energy for fewer cannabinoids. So you're saying, okay, I'm going to target 50,000 or 100,000 units of energy. Whatever that quantity is that you're targeting, you're going to then run the machine until it reaches that threshold, and then you're going to say, okay, I'm going to turn off the machine, and I'm now confident that my particle size is going to be roughly around where I want it to be. And then we validate that using a particle size analyzer that we have on site.
That's the next question. Is that laser or?
It is laser diffraction.
That's dope. Oh my god.
So laser diffraction helps us look at the particle size distribution based on a normal curve.
I just love the fact that you guys have an on-site QA lab that you actually actively are just checking your equipment all the time. I haven't seen many or heard of many on-site studio labs.
I don't think many places have them. There's a cost of doing business when it comes to nano, and you could otherwise submit it to a third party, but that third party then needs to be part of the I-502 sort of regulatory environment. And if they can't receive in a manifest for actives that are incoming to validate it, like you can't send it to University of Washington because they don't have the I-502 regulatory license number to allow us to transfer from us to them.
Yeah.
So we can't give it to anyone to help us. So we're going to help ourselves.
Wow. Because that's what the regulations say.
Yeah.
That's interesting. So you didn't start in the cannabis field. You came into it, and they're handing out 32 of these types of licenses in Illinois. What is your advice to people with your educational background and skill set that want to get into the cannabis extraction and processing space?
Mm-hmm. So specifically, taking, whether they're growing it themselves or not, but taking flower and making the value-added product, right? Which is distillate, wax, whatever that might be. The recommendation would be target your yields and understand your waste. So there is a lot that can go wrong with an extraction, from what I understand. And if you're not being very diligent with measuring your throughput, targeting your waste quantities, and slowly and incrementally chipping away at reducing that amount of waste, because the product is so valuable, you could lose 12 to 15% on an extraction. And if you do not have a regimented, consistent way of evaluating and then changing processes to improve on them very quickly, you could lose 10 to 50% of what could be a $50,000 extraction.
Yeah.
What does that mean to the bottom line? 10, what did that be? 50%, that's $7,000, $8,000, $9,000 per run, which could have been avoided if you're, being diligent.
How many runs do you guys do then? You say per run, it's gonna, if you don't have these procedures and QA protocols in place to ensure that you're always optimizing, how many runs do you guys have in a year like that?
In terms of actual extractions,
Yes.
we don't do any extractions here. So we collaborate with the extraction because it's different sets of licensing. So we have a license to grow, which means you also have the license to extract, but space is a premium. So in Washington State, we are limited based on the floor plan that we submit, which is square footage. And if we were to increase the square footage, we would go from tier 2 to tier 3, which we look forward to one day. But you're confined by the walls that you submitted as a site plan to the state. The state approves it and says this is exactly what you have to work with. It informs how many cameras you have, the kind of coverage that's required. And for that very reason, we said, okay, do we have the space and the flexibility to actually activate that license, start growing and doing our own extractions because we have the capabilities and the know-how? Or do we say, we don't quite have the space, why don't we take novel ingredients and organic ingredients and vegan ingredients and make a value-added product that people are going to like more and see how well that works for us and then worry about the licensing for extraction later. And so that's what the executive board decided at some point. And so we went after the more delicious stuff as opposed to the raw ingredient side of it.
Well, and that revolution, at least in Washington State, it's always been edible to me. Like, I've never known it to have a garden. There's some places that local Roots Northwest or some other gardens I can name, but even during medical times, it's always been edibles or tinctures. That's the backup. You don't know how to cook, But that's awesome, man.
Yeah, and we see edibles moving, and we also see beverages.
Yes.
So we think the future is definitely going to be in carbonated soft drinks or even non-carbonated, like our energy shots. It's a much lower milligram content, anywhere from like 8 to 12 milligrams THC average across our 4 experiences. And they do sell well, but what we do see in the market is people gravitating not only towards 100 milligram small servings, but also 100 milligram carbonated soft drinks as a way of, intaking cannabis, because some people just aren't interested in the candy aspect. Yeah, they just want to drink.
And then is that also maybe they see more of value proposition? They'll see like, oh, it's 100 milligrams. I want to get my money's worth.
Effectively, and there's less to work on, right? If you have to cut open 10 candies and shoot 10 candies back to back to get your 100 milligrams, sometimes that's kind of a barrier to entry, so to speak, right? So you're going to get your 100 milligram just by drinking a bottle, and it's over and done with. It's easy to do. You're not
it's funny you say
choking down a bunch of pectin fruit juice.
Oh god, you get it filled up, and But I think it's funny to say that you say that you see beverage going to be the future. Right when you said that, I heard a guy in Chicago jumping up and down because there's a guy that we had on the show before that he's oriented all on cannabis beverages. Like he's all balls in. This is it, and I respect that. I mean, everybody's gonna have their own lane. And as we talked about before, the experience is also different, as an edible. So I'm looking forward to it. I'm gonna definitely try one. I've never been an edible guy, but like you're the second person to tell me it's a different high, and I'm really gonna try it.
It is.
How are sales? I mean, I recall you saying that it's grown really fast. So, like, are you experiencing a good amount of growth right now?
We are. Interestingly enough, especially during the age of COVID, you probably need an economist to really dive in to help us understand the why. But in the age of COVID, we saw sales incrementally grow 5 to 10% month over month, every single month during the age of COVID. It then, kind of teetered off, and it's now back at what you would kind of call a steady state and normal level of sales. But our intention through, clever marketing, price reductions, streamlining processes, better negotiating with our vendors is to start allowing us to cut costs as far as what we're giving to the ultimate consumer, right? Well, how much do you have to pay at the retail store? And our intention is to, of course, continue to chip away at our competitors. Doesn't matter who the competitor is. If they're in the soft drink realm, we're going to grow our soft drinks to market or to capitalize on that market share. We want it.
Sure.
So that's where we're going to see our growth.
I think it's great that you guys do everything here. As Lily was saying, that when you do your edibles, sometimes it smells like a baked goodness here.
Oh yeah, we got chocolate chips, snickerdoodles, salted.
Oh my God.
We got salted caramel.
Are these
chocolate.
cookies?
These are all cookies.
Oh,
We've also got brownie bites. We've got toffee coffee bites. They're all fantastic.
Why didn't we come on Cookie Day?
Oh my God! Seriously though, because I'm fat already. That's why.
So no, it smells fantastic in here. Half the time it smells like a bakery. The other half the time it smells
Oh my
like
God, that's awesome.
A candy factory.
But you guys are all encompassing in one, and that's the one thing I always like. I think it's great that you guys are self-sufficient, self-serving, because it's the white label thing. It's like, did you really cook that? Did you really make that?
Yeah.
Like, do I trust you? But you guys have been around for so long, and I know and again, I told Lily, it's like, my wife loves you guys' stuff, and it's like, the edibles, it makes her happy. Here, babe, take them, and yeah.
Now, there was a big push. Our old chief executive, he's still part of the board. He's one of the co-founders of the company. His name is Ted Lafferty. He's a great guy, but his intention from the very beginning, because I think some of his original focus was on the medical space. It was to have cleanest possible product, selling the highest quality possible product, with the heaviest focus on quality overall, which is why it's a premium brand, right? Does it cost a little bit more at the retail? Yeah, it does. But are you getting, in your candy, only 6-7 different ingredients? Every one of them's organic, and if they're not organic, it's 100% all natural.
Yeah.
So we get our fruit puree out of Napa Valley. I mean, we very much are targeting the best product possible, and of course, with quality comes good customers.
Yeah, you're not McDonald's.
Yeah.
Yeah, more like Ruth Christie's, but for vegans.
That's right.
Well, I'm sure some of those cookies aren't vegan.
The cookies are all gluten-free, and the only feature in them that is, I think, considered non-vegan, I believe, is a type of powdered milk, maybe. But every other ingredient is vegan, and it is 100% gluten-free. This is a certified gluten-free baking facility.
And then for those, like the edible ones, I mean, they have a shelf space that's kind of shortened. So how do you guys work around like the food aspect? That one will always be scary to me too. Like things that have an expiration date. Like,
yeah, it is a challenge for sure. We do see a good number of returns coming back from the store, only because they expect the absolute freshness, and so we give them freshness by baking every other week. So we go through cycles of fresh bake, so that when you're getting something at the store, if you want toffee coffee, bite, you don't want it to taste even remotely stale. You want it to be soft, immediately chewable. And so we constantly bake to try to meet the needs of our customers. It's a hard product line to master because the shelf life is 3 months. Realistically, it's probably only good after about 2 or so. I mean, it's totally fine. I've eaten cookies that are 4 months, but our standards are really high. So we're always trying to target the freshest possible, which is why our CEO is very explicit. He goes, listen, if it's been in the building for longer than 14 days, you're going to have to throw that thing away. Throw it away, bake it again.
Nice.
And so...
Does the packaging for the cookie also have to be child-proof pursuant to regulations?
It does. Yeah. So all of them have to be at least, I think it's 2.5 or higher millimeter film. A lot of the competitors will use a 4 mil film. We used to use 4 mil film, but they all have to have the same single-serve CR requirement. Every single product.
Is a cookie allowed to look like a cookie, or do you have to shape it like a pizza or something?
No,
because I mean, LCB is just crazy.
Looks like a great cookie. No, it looks like a fantastic cookie. I'll bring some in later.
They took away what gummies, right, or flavoring? What was the rule that they squashed on for candies?
I'm not sure. I'm really not, because
okay.
I can think of some of our competitors.
Yeah.
Some of our competitors use like high fructose corn syrup and artificial flavor.
Oh, sure.
So I can tell you that some of those artificial flavors are wild. Like they're all over the place. Our flavors are all natural, and we flavor them with exotic stuff like passion fruit, mango is something that's coming down the pipeline. We've got Marionberry, peach. We recently released lemon lime, and some watermelon. Watermelon is a traditional Jolly Rancher style watermelon flavor. So if we can feasibly make a Jolly Rancher style watermelon, I don't think there's too many restrictions on flavors. So
how do you keep quality and flavors consistent over time?
that's a great question. That's a good. The short answer is with a good QA department. So yeah, so you need to have a QA department without exception, and it needs to be managed appropriately. As in any division of industrial labor, you need to have checks and balances. And I, as the operations manager, my intention is always to have the highest quality.
Yeah.
But I'm going to put productivity and efficiency ahead of that. So I need a gatekeeper, which is the quality department, to make sure that I'm always in line. And without a good quality department, you're going to wind up with mistakes.
Yeah. And how do you know quality's doing a job? Because nothing happens.
That's right.
I'm just saying that because I'm a quality guy, and I just like, give me my unemployment.
Well, that's great. You're going to be able to geek out here soon with the QA manager. And what else should we be discussing about the operations manager's role that is really important to people that may find themselves in your shoes one day?
That's a fantastic question. Cannabis, because it's a new industry, unless you have tons of venture capital, it's a manual business. So a lot of processes are manual. A lot of our packaging is manual. We use very novel shapes to some of our tinctures, for example. It's a square bottle. You could use a pneumatic 2-tamp press to give you a front and back label, so you could definitely automate it, but then you wouldn't have the side labels. You can use a rotary, labeler, which is on a cylindrical bottle, which we used to use, but all of our competitors do it. It's easy. So there are definitely ways that you can automate the process, but a lot of processes are going to inevitably be manual until you reach a volume threshold. And you just have to build around it. I'll give you an example. We want to have do some capital equipment upgrades to our candy making equipment and take us to the next level. We have a lot of lofty goals, some of which are very narrowly focused on THC business in Washington and continuing to dominate every aspect that we can.
Nice.
And some of it also is looking at a national market, whether it might be CBD or things of that nature, which requires large equipment. Guess what? Our roof is only 14 feet tall. You need to have 16 to 18 feet of clearance to have a mezzanine to host some of the equipment that we're looking into. So for someone who's planning a business and who's intending to grow, think 3 to 5 years ahead. Don't think about the right now.
Sure.
Because the right now will get you somewhere, and you can bootstrap it. It'll get you money in the door. You'll be able to save some of it for additional upgrades down the road. But there will be certain things like the height of your roof, the thickness of your walls, things of that nature that had you taken into account once upon a time, your power requirements, 6, 7, 800 amps. So if you don't have that kind of power available to you, you're going to run into roadblocks. So when you see these periods of rapid expansion, if you haven't had the forethought, then you're gonna have issues.
Especially for industrial equipment, right? Because for the processing, there's a lot of power requirements that, and then if you do expand, then you have to still consider the loading that happens. I mean, we were talking about the EMP, the manufacturing best practices and whatnot, and I was going through it, and some you have to look at the building. As a technician, I've always been looking at the performance of the person. That's the one thing that I can look at and red flag but with your manufacturing process, you're looking at the whole building and you try to anticipate. We're going to start with just one plug-in, but we want to have 3 of these, so we better have better power outlets and whatnot. Because,
that's right. So get to know your electricians. We're lucky. We have a great relationship with people 3 buildings down.
Oh,
they are our electricians.
Right on.
And so when we need the help, they're here pretty quickly. But the other advice I would say is pretty common for manufacturing is track, rank, and publish. So track, rank, and publish. Know what your team is doing, track them, rank them so they understand how well that they are doing, and then publish that so that you have complete transparency as far as how well things are going or aren't going, and then figure out as a team how to course correct. So that's one of our tenets is radically honest and transparent.
Are you also a project manager? Because as we learned earlier from the head of the joint rollers, she helped make it more efficient. So I imagine how was she able to voice her opinion that it got heard, and then we're like, hey, let's give it a try, because it's kind of neat that a big company listens to the small person.
Yeah, so we believe in complete and total ownership over your process and your people, and so that was her room, right, her department, and she has total ownership over every single aspect of it, and so of course you need periods of approval, and we try to remove barriers. We typically don't put many up. And so if she comes with a new idea, she says, I would like to amend the SOP, I'll approve the amendment to the SOP, I will track it, we're going to rank how well those changes did, and then we're going to publish them to see how well that process amendment yields in terms of the bottom line, how much throughput did we get from it, fantastic, great, and then we reward our people accordingly.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
It's awesome. Well, I really want to thank you for sitting down and sharing your wisdom. This is very enlightening.
Yeah,
Thank you
man.
guys very much for your
Thank you
time.
for your time, dude.
Absolutely.
You're great.
Appreciate it.
Absolutely.
All right, let's do
Fantastic.
QA, and then we'll probably meet it up.
Yeah. No problem, man.